In today's video, we're going to talk about 3 changes to make at 50 that can make all the difference to help you retire happier. You know, if you're in your 50s now, you've probably been focused on building wealth, maxing out your retirement accounts, and so on, and you may be more or less on autopilot. And that might be fine, but as you get closer to retirement, things start to shift. What worked in your 30s and 40s probably isn't going to cut it anymore. What I've noticed is as my clients go through this transition, the ones who retire happiest tend to make a few key changes. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through these 3 changes, why they matter, how they can improve your retirement, and how you can start making them today. So let's dive in. All right, so we're going to get right into our first change, and that is shifting from growth to income-focused investing. A lot of high earners, they have a lot of money that they can save, and once you reach your 50s, you've probably accumulated a lot of wealth, like $2 to $3 million in a lot of cases. And what you see happen is that the vast majority of that ends up being in stocks, which, great, right? You know, stocks for the long run, all of that, not a bad thing necessarily. Now, what happens though when you kind of reach age 50 or maybe a little bit older and you've accumulated that kind of wealth is your view of market volatility starts to shift. And just think about it simply here, you know, a 10% loss, which is something that happens quite frequently in market history, you know, every year or two, generally at a minimum, I think you experience a 10% loss. If you have a $3 million portfolio, that means you're going to see the value of that portfolio shift by $300,000. For most people, it took them years to accumulate $300,000. And so seeing those types of shift in their net worth is more than most people can handle. This puts them on edge, and it, in a lot of instances, leads them to make kind of big mistakes when they're investing. So this is exactly why it can make a lot of sense to start shifting part of your portfolio into more income-oriented investments. Steady income puts people at ease. It kind of reduces the emotional roller coaster of market swings. And the truth of the matter is income coming from your portfolio just feels a lot more real than gains that are made on paper through prices of stocks going up. A lot of people kind of feel that stock market gains are sort of divorced from economic reality. And the truth is they're not wrong, right? I mean, if you look at the way that the stock market has behaved, especially since maybe the end of the great financial crisis, to a large degree, it's just kind of been driven by whatever the Federal Reserve bank policy is. And it can swing up and down seemingly for no reason that's based in, you know, earnings or reality. And that's off-putting for a lot of people. It makes you feel like you have no sense of control. Whereas if you know that you're getting income coming in and it's steady, coming from your portfolio, a lot of people tend to deal with that much better, and it can just put them at ease. All right, so there's 3 things you need to do yourself to start this transition. 1, you need to start by assessing your current portfolio, and you've got to find the right balance between growth and income. If you're in your 50s, it's generally going to not work in your favor if you make a massive shift and like all of a sudden I went from 100% stocks to like 10% stocks or something like that. Because, you know, you do want to own stocks for the long run, and they need to be a healthy part of most people's portfolio. So you got to focus on finding the right balance between those that's still going to help you meet your overall retirement needs in the future. So that gets us to point number 2. You need to align these income streams to work for you. And that's going to be towards your goals and, you know, specifically your retirement goals too, right? And you want to do things like avoiding unnecessary tax burdens. So some examples of how you might align this, well, if you have a HELOC or something, maybe you pay that HELOC off. Maybe one of your goals is to pay down your mortgage early. Well, you could use this extra income to do that. It might be lifestyle enhancement, or one great area that you could focus this extra income on would be doing something like Roth conversions. So you might say, great, well now I've got an extra, I don't know, $25,000 of income after tax per year. What am I going to do with that? Well, you might say, hey, I've got this extra income, but I don't necessarily need it. Strategically, now what we're going to do is we're going to start doing Roth conversions, and we're going to use that extra income to pay for the taxes on the Roth conversion. And now I'm converting this money to a tax-free vehicle that's really going to benefit my overall wealth in retirement, right? Number 3, you need to select the income option that suits you best. There are dozens of different income-oriented investments out there, and so you need to choose the ones that fit your specific needs, that kind of, work this overall plan we've just been talking about best for you. It could be dividend-paying stocks. Maybe it's real estate rentals, right? People tend to love those. There are things called closed-end funds. There are even non-traded type private investments that do things like real estate backed loans. And look, you have to be very judicious when you're making this decision, but there are lots of options out there, and it's going to be different for everybody. Before we move on, I do want to emphasize that everyone's situation is different, like I just said. What works for one person might not work for you. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is assuming that they're on track without really knowing. So to avoid that, I put together a quick questionnaire that will show you exactly where you stand. Once you fill it out, I'll personally email you a custom video. It's going to break down your retirement readiness, and I'll even point out key areas you should be focusing on. All you need to do is click the link in the description below to get started. Now, let's get back to our video and let's talk about change number 2, and that is investing in experiences over assets. What I find all the time is that you spend years accumulating things. There's something called lifestyle creep, and it's like the more money you make, the more you spend. So you start getting bigger houses, luxury cars, boats, things like that. And then you hit your 50s and you realize that none of these things has really made you happy. Most of it is just kind of BS, and you've just been a hamster on a wheel, and you're getting exhausted because you're actually working your butt off at the same time. I'll give you guys a kind of aha moment I remember we had with a client several years ago. This person was a surgeon, and he kind of fits the lifestyle that I just described. He made quite a lot of money, but their lifestyle matched it. And he was just kind of running on fumes. I mean, he worked all the time and couldn't wait to retire. Now, even though he had, and I'm trying to remember at the time this happened, I don't know, it must have been like, $3.5 million at the time. If he wanted to kind of maintain that lifestyle, $3.5 million isn't going to cut it. And so he needed to accumulate quite a lot more according to our financial plan. And so we're sitting down in the meeting going over kind of the last 10 years with him, and we start to kind of home in on the luxury car thing. And he had been spending, $100,000 to $120,000 every 2 to 3 years on a different luxury car. And we showed him the impact of that on his overall net worth and the kind of opportunity cost of, if you had taken that money and instead invested it. And by the way, you still need to own cars, right? So he still would have spent money on cars, just don't buy them as often, and you don't need, maybe the $120,000 model, things like that. But, if you do that, this still worked out to hundreds of thousands of dollars over time, and it literally would have knocked like 3 years off of his retirement date. And this was that epiphany moment, and he's just like, I don't even know why I do this. I don't need those cars, and it's not a thing that he was getting enjoyment out of, right? So this is kind of what I'm talking about, and a lot of people that I think transition successfully into retirement, they go, oh, I don't need to accumulate these possessions. Instead, I should be focused more on experiences. And he kind of did that. And of course, he's not spending as much on experiences as he was on these assets. So, why do this, right? Well, number one, studies show that people derive more happiness from experiences than they do material things. I think we've probably all heard that. Another reason to kind of prioritize these experiences over your assets is that if you wait to prioritize those experiences until you are retired, you might not really have your health there to do that. I went online before this video to kind of look up the stats, and so our overlords in Silicon Valley tell me that the average age for a hip or knee replacement in the United States is 65, and that's actually getting younger through time for whatever reason. And so, you might think that, oh, I'm going to retire and do all the things I wanted to, but guess what? You might not be able to. So those are two key reasons why you want to probably make this shift in your 50s instead of waiting. Now, how do we go about doing this? Well, number one, you're going to want to reallocate your discretionary spending towards these experiences, right? Maybe that's some travel, maybe it's hobby-related stuff. It could be personal growth pursuits, right? A lot of people tend to start focusing on health for the reasons we just discussed. And so, you might spend some money on a personal trainer and gym and so on, right? But you got to figure out, where do I get that money from? And part of that could be from what we just discussed in point number one, which is you've got more income from your portfolio. You could now divert some of that into these experiences. Now, second thing you need to do, get rid of unnecessary assets and free up some cash for these. You might want to sell the boat. With the funds from that boat, you could invest, earn more money on that, and then maybe a couple times a year, you just rent a boat. Do what I just discussed with the luxury car. Maybe instead of buying a luxury car every 2 years, now it becomes every 8 years or 10 years, something like that. Or maybe you buy a Lexus instead of a Mercedes, top-end Mercedes-Benz or BMW or something, right? Number three, you have to set clear lifestyle goals for retirement, build them into your financial plan, and ensure that they are prioritized. And the time to start doing that is around the age of 50, or at least sometime in your 50s prior to when you would ideally like to retire. All right, so we'll go to change number three. And I think this one might be a little bit unexpected, maybe even a little controversial, but that is paying off your mortgage early. So look, paying off your mortgage early in a lot of cases probably isn't going to be the optimal solution as far as maximizing your return on investment or something like that. I mean, if you have a 3% interest rate on your mortgage and you are diverting funds that you could have been investing at a higher rate into paying something down that you're only paying 3% on, from a financial perspective, that's probably suboptimal. But not everything has to be about optimization or rationalization. People are human beings too, and there's a huge emotional component to consider. And the fact of the matter is, carrying a mortgage into retirement can be a huge emotional burden. Two big things I've always noticed that just made it such a huge emotional difference for clients is A, having their mortgages paid off and really just having no debt when they go into retirement, and B, having some type of guaranteed income. Almost everybody that has a pension and Social Security that I deal with, they're always so much more confident about their retirement plan than those that just have Social Security and then they're drawing from their portfolios to make up for the rest of it. So those two things really do matter. Now, if this is something that you're interested in doing when you're in your 50s, because let's be honest, most people are, when you get into your 50s, your peak earning years, and you do tend to have that discretionary income where you might be able to pay off your mortgage early. So how do you go about doing that? Well, number one, you have to evaluate whether paying off your mortgage early makes financial sense based on interest rates, tax implications, available savings, versus removing this sort of emotional burden. You need to know the trade-offs. But once you decide, if you decide that those trade-offs are worth it, then number two, what you have to do is make sure that your regular savings goals are also being met with your retirement plan, right? This needs to be part of your overall financial strategy, not just a thing in isolation. you probably don't want to start paying off your mortgage if it means that your other savings goals aren't met and that you won't be able to retire when you wanted to. So it has to be done together. Now, number 3, you have to select the strategies that are going to be best for you. That might mean making extra mortgage principal payments every time you get paid. An interesting strategy is always paying it twice a month. You might refinance maybe in today's environment that would be tough, but there might be some instances where you pay less interest and so you refinance and then you also pay down extra interest. Or it might be a situation where you just use bonuses or stock options, or maybe there's an inheritance, right? But some type of windfall, and you use that to pay down your mortgage faster. At the end of the day, making the right changes in your 50s can mean the difference between a stressful retirement and a fulfilling one. But knowing which changes apply to you, that's the real challenge. A lot of people assume they're on track until they realize they've missed something critical. And to help avoid that, I put together a quick questionnaire that'll give you a clear picture of where you stand. When you fill it out, I'll send you a personalized video breaking down your retirement readiness with actionable insights that are tailored to your specific situation. All you need to do is click the link below to get started. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.